As we now begin a new year that is filled with what seems to be unreasonable uncertainty and chaos, let us not forget the hope, joy, and promise that is also here under the fog of the constant bombardment of daily events. We are called to rejoice in the comfort, solace, and support of this church that can make more possible than we can imagine. Our chalice lighting today is by Alex Engelbrecht. In this space, with atheists and theists, with pagans and agnostics, with humanists and theists, and those who reject labels, what new understanding can emerge if we listen to one another? In this space, full of varied experiences, concerns, and hopes, what new revelations may come if our hearts and minds are open? In this space where we covenant to seek the truth in love and to help one another, what new ways of life may emerge and come into being? Welcome to this diverse community and the possibilities within it just waiting to be born. Our first reading, Space for Possibility by Gretchen Haley. What's going to happen? Will everything be okay? What can I do? In these days, we find ourselves too often stuck with these questions on repeat. What's going to happen? Will everything be okay? What can I do? We grasp at signs and markers, articles of news and analysis, Facebook memes and forwarded emails, as if the new zodiac, capable of forecasting all that life may yet bring our way, as if we could prepare, as if life had ever made any promise of making sense or turning out the way we thought, as if we are not also actors in the still unfolding story. For this hour we gather to surrender to the mystery, to release ourselves from the needing to know, the yearning to have it already figured out, and also the burden of believing we either have all the control or none. Here in our song and our silence, our stories and our sharing, we make space for a new breath, a new healing, a new possibility to take root. That is courage, forged in the fire of our coming together, and felt in the spirit that comes alive in this act of faith. That we believe still a new world is possible, that we are creating it already here and now. Our second reading, Falling into the Sky by David Breeden. Years end ways. I dug and dug deeper into the earth, looking for blue heaven, choking always on piles of dust rising. Then once, at midnight, I slipped and fell into the sky.
Not too long ago, driving across the wide-open plains of Highway 14 between Rochester and Mankato, a drive that I know well and that I actually love and have come to realize that's a minority opinion, these beautiful flatlands. So we were going along, and my fellow traveler asked, it was just after dusk, a little while, and it was starting to get dark, and she asked, with her new glasses on, questioning if she was perceiving the world correctly. She said, "So is there something wrong with my lenses, or do you also see lights just kind of ascending into the sky?" And I said, "Well, if there's something wrong with your lenses, then there also are with my eyes or the windshield, because I see the same thing." It was a dark, foggy winter night, and if you travel on country roads in winter fog, you may know this, that sometimes any little light, a farmyard light, a distant small city, even the headlights right in front of the car, seem to find their way upward, ascending into the sky. Someone more scientific than I explained this phenomenon to me after the 9 o'clock service. And why it only happens in winter is the light is refracted off of the ice crystals in the fog, right? So many of you know that already. I had no idea. It's just beautiful. I said I think in poetry, not science often. And so they ascended, and there's something magical about that, as if that light was drawing our gaze toward the heavens, connecting heaven and earth in this passageway of light. Something magical about light shooting up in the midst of fog like a beacon, a star shining, every little light ascending to the heavens. Years end ways I dug and dug, writes the poet David Breeden. Deeper into the earth, looking for blue heaven, choking always on piles of dust rising. Then once at midnight I slipped and I fell into the sky. It can feel like that at year's end. We dig and piles of dust rise. We're digging for meaning or purpose or productivity, choking on piles of expectations from whatever we've been pouring our time and energy into, impossible expectations from ourselves or from someone else or from our culture and world. The social assertion to have more and more and more, whether it's stuff or money or whatever it is that somewhere deep down we know isn't good for us to just have more. But it's hard not to keep pursuing it. Searching for blue heaven, we choke on fog and smog that surrounds us. But isn't it something that the only way those lights will spark up into the sky is when the fog is dense and thick, and now I know, cold? Isn't it something that the only way we notice something magical has to do with what is surrounding it? Something illuminating, some guiding light shows up when it is surrounded by obscurity. Isn't it something that sometimes right in the midst of chaos, in the midst of a cloudy and fogged-in world, that we begin to notice the beauty that is there, has been there every single time, but we notice it differently this time? The little rays of light spark up into the sky, reminding us it is the simplest things, the most normal, regular things, like a yard light. It comes in as little miracles to us. Maybe these miracles in the midst of your own foggy or chaotic life are coffee or music or friends. Those little moments that after you've been working so hard for the perfect life to achieve something that really can't be achieved, something catches your attention, and finally, after choking on the piles of dust rising, at midnight you slip and you fall into the sky. That's what possibility is like. Shining right in the middle of everything that is always there. Sometimes it shows up and lights up in a way you hadn't noticed before. We often get caught in the questions and the hesitations, the hows, or the what if, or I can't imagine. We get trapped in a prison of impossibilities. The mantras of scarcity that are certain, the things like hope and like potential and dreams and love and possibility are unrealistic. They are irresponsible to think of. They can't be done. In these days, writes Gretchen Haley, we find ourselves too often stuck with these questions on repeat. What's going to happen? Will everything be okay? What can I do? And then she says we grasp at signs and markers, articles and news and analysis, Facebook memes and forwarded emails as if they are the new zodiac, capable of forecasting all that life yet may bring to us. She says, as if we could prepare, as if life had ever made any promise to make sense to us or turn out the way we'd thought. Have you found yourself or loved ones grasping for those signs in the midst of fog and chaos, holding on to analysis, forecasting dread, only looking at what is or what is most likely or most certain rather than what could be or might be or is possible. Have you ever thought maybe it's possible? Can you remember a moment in your life when you thought maybe it's possible, though almost everything in you or around you was telling you, don't think that's possible? But you thought maybe it's possible. Maybe it's possible to reconcile with this family member or this friend. Maybe it's possible to learn something new or try something different. Maybe it's possible that you're going to like this food and you're going to try it because your parents are asking you to try it, and we're sure that you're going to like it, but you keep telling me, no, you don't. And I digress. I live with small children. I keep telling them it's possible. They'll like carrots and other things. Can you think of that time when you thought, maybe it's possible that your life can spiral into joy, even without having to change it too much, other than just a little orientation or calibration of your own heart toward seeing beauty, noticing joy, being attentive to grace or love or compassion, and trying to notice it in the midst of everything. That's all religion is at its best. Trying to recalibrate and reattune our hearts and our souls, coming back over and over again, week after week, year after year, because we can't seem to really learn it all that well, and we need tune-ups constantly to see and notice and experience beauty and joy and love in the most ordinary things. Maybe things are possible. At least Marge Piercy thinks so. She writes, "It's not too late. Now is the time to do what you know you must and have feared to begin. So forgive the dead year and forgive yourself. What will be wants to push through your fingers. The light you seek hides in your own belly. The light you crave for longs to stream through your eyes. You are the moon that will wax in new goodness." So what have you feared to do? Or what have we feared to do as communities, as humanity? What do we fail to imagine? How might we find little sparks of light right in the midst of fog, reminding us that in the middle of it, love and joy and hope are still and always possible. It's not too late. A few years ago during the winter, around this time in Minneapolis, there was yet another young black male killed at the hands of law enforcement. And because of the strength of the Black Lives Matter movement in Minneapolis at the time, it didn't take long for things to be organized. Permits granted, marshals trained, orange vests given to all these trainers that were going to keep people safe, and actually a really good relationship between these organizers and the St. Paul police that they routed and protected their route. So these organizers planned a few route possibilities and also a few surprises along the way that only core leaders knew about. This was their regular practice. So if you had gathered at some of their marches or protests before, you knew there would be something unexpected, and it would be powerful and surprising and well organized. Some of the unexpected aspects of the marches were going off of the main route onto I-94 to shut that down, which they didn't get onto I-94 that time when I was with them, but it did shut down the interstate for a short time. Another time it was stopping in the middle of an intersection on Hamlin Avenue, getting people to lie down for a number of seconds, representing how many unarmed people of color had been killed in the last year, as religious leaders held hands of blessing over those who lay on the street. The call to organize was swift and efficient, calling together faith leaders and community activists, leaders from the elected offices in the city, artists, all at the ready to be sure silence was not the response to fear and violence. Moving along University Avenue during this march, I could see up ahead of me there was something going on among the leaders. They were talking a little bit about what was going to happen next, and I didn't know what it was. They were communicating and began having people assemble in the intersection at the corner of Lexington and University Avenue. It was a corner that I was familiar with, and having lived near there a few years earlier, I kind of knew the landscape and terrain. So there were several hundred people marching that day. So the crowd quickly filled that intersection, and they stopped behind the lead truck, which had speakers and microphone. That's what we were following the whole time. And we began to look inward to see what they were going to announce, what it was going to be. I knew it would be something unexpected, powerful, impactful as always. And I wasn't quite as afraid anymore of what they'd ask us to do because I had done it enough, and I trusted their leadership deeply, knowing that I would only be pushed to the edges of my comfort that were good for me. And one of the leaders grabbed a mic on the back of the truck and said, "It's been a hard week. All these weeks seem to be hard these days." He said, "We keep marching and working and voting and protesting, and we'll keep doing that as long as we need more justice or freedom or love. But one thing this culture of brutality cannot do to us," he said, "is take away our capacity, our ability, our birthright to joy and happiness and music and rhythm. And since these are our streets," he said, "we're going to dance in them." And just like that, the music on the speakers blasted hip-hop from the radio, and the people started dancing. There on the corner, the intersection of University and Lexington, between the Unbank on one side and White Castle on the other side, people from all backgrounds, all ages, all communities, responding to the fog of violence and despair and grief and rage and pain of a community torn apart, here not too far from the Rondo community, which, if you know, in St. Paul was ripped apart by I-94, this historic black community. Not too far away, they danced at the intersection. They danced to music on the radio, reminding each other that this type of joy and rhythm and music and life is what they're marching for. And if you can't find joy and music and rhythm, there's no point to marching, and there's no point to living. It was something unexpected. It was something simple and beautiful and powerful. The leaders decided this time, as much as we need rage and pain, we also need dancing. Isn't it something that right in the middle of the street, where the people have been caught up in the fog of despair, a passageway of light opens up, connecting earth to heaven, connecting life that sparks up into the sky, lights up the world. Music you hear on the radio transformed in this moment and this place because of the despair that surrounded them, because of the air they were breathing. The music transformed into something like it was in a temple, and these people turned into dancing angels and saints as they danced on holy ground. In the middle of deep darkness, something broke open and shined. Isn't it something that sometimes the most normal everyday things light up your life, bring heaven right down to earth in your foggy, uncertain world? Isn't it something that sometimes it's hard to imagine that there is the possibility of hope, of love, of joy, of compassion, and we have to check our lenses, and we have to talk to the person next to us and say, "Are you seeing this too? I thought this was impossible, but it is beautiful." Because we are cautious and hesitant to believe in the possibility that there is beauty and there is magic right alongside the road in our common, everyday moments. When you're surrounded only by light, you don't notice that thing, but when the sky is dark and filled with fog, or at least you notice that it is, then things can become a little more magical, nothing short of a miracle. Right in the middle of those moments in your life, when your heart is broken open in grief or pain, or relationships are torn apart, or grief is sitting with you in a way that seems too heavy to manage, when the world is obscured with fear or sadness or loneliness or rage, that's when they tend to pop up, these passageways of light. Maybe it's a friend with a cup of coffee, or in Minnesota, it's someone with a hot dish. Maybe it's an invitation, a chance to sit down and share stories, or an invitation from the earth to notice the sunrise or the sunset, the invitation to dance to music in the street, the invitation to notice the wag of a tail or the imagination or playfulness of a child or the eyes of a newborn opening as if it were for the first time every time. It's the way a mug can rest in your hands in the morning and you feel the warmth greeting you, saying you can rise to this day too. It is often when the world is so fogged up that the little simple moments of possibility shine the brightest. sometimes not only in spite of, but because of the hardness and the harshness of the world. It's just a moment or a smile or a word or a breath or a song or people dancing that breaks the sky open right when we need it. And all we can say is, wow, isn't that something? The hymn As My Life Flows On in Endless Song. I invite you to rise in body or spirit. I invite you, as you're comfortable, to join a hand next to you or place your hand over your heart and breathe deep the breath of life. Fog to the north, fog to the south, wind and rain and snow and storm to the east and the west. But in my soul there's a circle like the sun, shining every day. May it be so. Amen.